Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Hi, SB and Modesto. And I have Randeep in Bakersfield, right?
I am here.
Okay. Thanks for being here. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with participation via Zoom, public participation via Zoom and webcast. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to unmute or mute manually. Audio from members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. At this time, I will call the meeting to order and ask the clerk for a roll call, please.
Okay, good afternoon. Ms. Vielma?
Here.
Mr. Graywall?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Ms. Martinez? Ms. Gutiel?
Here.
Okay, through the chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. Okay. Item 3 is to approve the minutes. Is there any corrections or additions from any of the members from the meetings that were submitted as part of your packet? Any public comment?
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield on the minutes?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Seeing no members of the public in Fresno and none online.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will consider the minutes approved with no corrections or additions. And then item 4, this time is made available for comments from the public on matters that are not on the agenda. It is requested that no comments be made during this period on items on the agenda. The public may make comments on each EJAG agenda item during the time allowed for public comments. Attention is called to the fact that the EJAG is prohibited by law from taking any action on discussion of matters that are not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, if you'll call.
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Okay, seeing no members of the public and none online.
Okay. Okay, and then we will move on then to number 5 on the agenda, chair comments. And at this point, I don't have any, except thank you for making this time available, all of you for being here. I appreciate your dedication to this yearly committee. That being said, I guess we can go on to number 6, discuss and approve EJAG incentive spending plan recommendations for the 2025-2026 budget.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brian Dodds. I'm a program manager here at the district in our grants and incentives department. Here this evening or this afternoon to discuss the EJAG recommendations for the fiscal year budget that we're currently working on. So just to kind of tee things up a little bit for the purpose of today's discussion, we are currently developing our budget proposal for the fiscal year 25-26. And that's effective from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. We're going through a process now of putting together what that budget looks like. And that includes a pretty extensive development of our incentive program spending plan, which will guide our implementation of available grant programs in the next fiscal year that we have available for residents, for businesses, for public agencies throughout the valley. Our goal is to seek the Environmental Justice Advisory Group's recommendations for program funding priorities. So what we'll do with this committee is review the current fiscal year priorities and funding levels, and then seek any additional guidance or priorities that your group might have, and we'll utilize those recommendations from EJAG as we move forward and develop and implement the budget and ultimately present the budget to the board, which is a two-step process, public hearing in May, and then it's officially adopted in June at our board meeting. Just kind of a quick reminder of the success that we've had with our incentive programs over the years. Since district inception in 1992, we've reduced 286,000 tons of emissions through more than $7.1 billion in public and private funding to purchase, replace, or retrofit thousands of pieces of equipment. Over the last 10 years, we've done, and just to highlight a few of these that are on the list here, over 16,000 ag equipment replacement projects, 30,000 fireplace change-out projects, deployed 38,000 new alternative light fuel vehicles through our programs, over 100,000 vehicle emission repairs. A couple other ones to highlight, over 7,000 electric lawnmower replacements that we've done throughout the valley. So a pretty broad range of categories that we have for our available incentive programs, and they're always in very high demand by program participants. And these recommendations that we're seeking from the EJAG committee, we'd like to get your recommendations on specific programs and project types and areas of focus for our executive director for the expenditure of incentive funds. This process was initially started through the implementation of our AB 2522 DMV funds. Initially, there was a $10 million expenditure requirement for air quality improvement projects and environmental justice communities. To date, since we've began collecting those 2522 funds, over 70% of the funds collected, which total more currently more than $320 million, has been expended in environmental justice communities throughout the valley. So we've well exceeded the initial $10 million requirement that would have been required for EJ communities, and the vast majority of our DMV related funding is expended in environmental justice communities. We want to provide EJAG the opportunity to provide feedback and recommendations as necessary on the programs and funding levels. We also just want to note that there are additional environmental justice considerations within our existing grant programs. Many of the funding sources have percent targets that we need to spend in environmental justice communities. We traditionally, well exceed those requirements. And we've also designed programs to try and meet the needs of low-income participants and increase participation in low-income and environmental justice areas as well. Just a review of previous years' EJAG recommendations focused on school bus replacement projects, on-road heavy-duty vehicle replacement projects, light-duty passenger vehicles, which includes our vehicle repair and replacement programs, which primarily benefit environmental justice areas, a focus on our heavy-duty engine program, including ag irrigation pump projects, ag equipment replacement projects, so mobile sources, their forklifts, off-road equipment, including construction and portable equipment. Additional priorities include bicycle or non-combustion motorized vehicles, and developing and deploying those types of equipment for transportation and environmental justice areas. In addition, wood stove and fireplace change-out projects are an additional priority. As you're aware, during the winter months, the particulate matter emissions from wood stove and fireplace equipment residential use is one of the top sources of emissions here in the valley. And so as we develop our budget, which we're currently working on, The current fiscal year that we're in right now includes $571 million for district incentive programs. And we consider a variety of factors in determining how to spend and where to put our available incentive dollars. That might include the cost effectiveness of available projects, inventory or existing backlog of projects, required expenditure timeframes. We want to make sure that, where we're spending our dollars or allocating our dollars, we can meet the timelines that are associated with those grants. Environmental justice areas, we want to make sure that we're spending funding and meeting the needs of those communities. Any upcoming regulatory deadlines also play a key factor in how we can spend our incentive dollars. We can't pay for compliance. They're one of the key components of incentive programs. It has to be early or extra, so it has to go beyond any existing rule requirements. We certainly take into account any health benefits that we can achieve through our emission reduction projects. We want to promote technology advancement, and we certainly want to ensure that there's community involvement in the process and community benefits. Another thing to note is that while some of our funding sources may have discretion in the types of funding or project categories that funding can be spent on, some of it is very prescribed. For instance, the Carl Moyer program funding that we get for through CARB has very specific categories of funding that we can spend that on. So it certainly has to meet the eligibility criteria of the funding source that we're looking at or wanting to utilize. I'll run through these real quickly, just as kind of a high level overview of our existing fiscal year spending plan. Again, we're in the process of developing this for next year, but just to kind of give some context, again, $571 million overall in the spending plan. Ag equipment replacement projects total about $146 million in our spending plan, $1 million for ag pump replacement, $5 million for alt fuel infrastructure, $5 million for dairy feed electrification, $5 million for electric ag UTVs, $3 million for electric yard trucks. We have $1 million for emergency vehicle replacement, 4.5 for Lotus harvesters, $20 million, just over $20 million in our heavy duty truck replacement program, and $4 million for forklifts. Within the heavy duty category, several of these are part of the EJAG recommendation priorities. Ag pump replacement, ag tractors, and truck replacement, certainly a high priority of the EJAG committee in the past. In terms of programs available for communities, our community incentive type projects, over 16 million for fireplace changeouts. Again, an EJAG recommendation there. Commercial lawn and garden at 4 million. Our vehicle rebate program at 8. Our repair program at $12 million. And our replacement program this fiscal year was about $34 million. Those are two high priorities of your committee and the EJAG as a whole in the past as well. We have programs that help reduce vehicle miles traveled through bike pass, e-mobility projects. That was funded at $1 million this year. That's another EJAG recommendation. Our residential lawn and garden program, which sees high demand, of course, is at 500,000. Another category of incentive funding that we have available is through our AB 617 program. Some of these funding amounts are part of the approved SERPs, the community emission reduction programs that we've developed with our AB 617 communities of Stockton, South Fresno, Shafter, Arvin, Lamont. While some of this funding is board prioritized with our community air protection funds that we have. Again, another EJAG high priority ag equipment replacement through 617 totals about 16.5 million. Ag pump replacement, a couple $100,000. Air filtration in schools, which we're currently implementing at $2.8 million. Alt fuel infrastructure 9, bike lane infrastructure 1.5, fireplace and wood stove changeouts 2.6, car sharing programs at 500,000. We've got additional funding for our charge up program at about $850,000, commercial lawn and garden through 617 at $700,000. Each of the communities prioritized repair and replacement funding as well, at $1.5 million for repair and 11.4 for replacement. And we've got some additional funding for public benefits at $8.2 million, alt ag burn, $30 million, and locomotives, $17.2 million, and electric yard trucks about $4.9 million. Additional funding through AB 617 or the Community Air Protection Funds includes funding for residential air filtration, road paving and sidewalks at $10.2 million, school bus replacement, $25.2 million, another recommendation from EJAG to support that particular program. A solar match, 1.5, truck idling, 200,000. We've got additional funding, $25 million for truck replacement programs. Couple of the communities had funding prioritized for truck rerouting studies and underfired charbroilers and vegetative barriers and urban greening funded at $3.5 million. And then finally, some of our advanced technology or advanced transportation projects and technology advancement program type projects. This is valley-wide. Our charge up program was funded at $7 million, public benefits just about $8 million. We had $8.7 million in funding for this fiscal year through the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. We're implementing that statewide for school bus, shuttle bus, and transit bus projects. Recently, we were awarded additional $30 million for that category. So that will certainly be a part of next year's budget as well. And then a couple different demonstration projects that we're currently working on, including wrapping up the Frito-Lay demonstration project in Modesto, an OK Produce project here in Fresno to demonstrate electric trucks, and then a project through the Highway Administration totaling $55 million in funding for electric vehicle charging and deployment. And then lastly, some non-mobile programs is what we call them here. $10 million for alt ag burn. We had about $50,000 left in our Clean Air Centers program and $1.7 million for Clean Air Rooms, which provides residential air filtration to residents in disadvantaged communities throughout the valley. And then $1.5 million in our technology advancement program, and about $232,000 from our air toxics fees that we collect that can support incentive programs as well. I know that was a pretty quick rundown of our programs, but then just bringing it back to the final slide here is just a reminder again about the priorities that you guys had put in place for the last year. At this point, we'd be looking to see if there are additional recommendations, if you want to edit any of the recommendations that are here before you. You would then take the finalized recommendations at the full meeting here in about an hour for discussion amongst the entire group. And then that would provide the input that we're looking for as we develop our budget. So with that, I'll turn it back to you and happy to answer any questions that you might have or dive deeper as you feel necessary.
Okay, thank you for that overview. Gosh, my head is now like, whoa. It's a lot. No, it's a lot. And I did read through it last night. I guess it still always shocks me is how much is there, how far we've come. That's always super exciting to see where we started at and how far we've come. I will go ahead and start comments in Modesto, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I had I guess it would be a recommendation, you know, on the overall for the valley that we had for the lawnmowers. was that the total? What was it, like 500,000? I'm trying to find the page where I saw it when you went over that.
That's correct. 500,000 for the valley-wide program, and there's a separate bucket for
Yeah.
AB 617 communities.
Right. And so being that, and so this is like my push, is that when we had our first one, which was through AB 617, I don't know if you have offhand what the cost is to put one of those on, right? Because that's where this money would be going towards, is the actual exchange and then the overall budget to actually do the exchange. But that one was very highly successful. I'm not sure how many total we had at the end of lawnmowers that were exchanged. And I know that for AB 617, we have additional funds, but you know, for the larger community itself, that would be very beneficial. So I don't know if there's something that we can do to put that in as part of our priority, because it's not on there. And I think that that's like a very small amount for the entire valley outside of AB 617. It's a program that I think is very beneficial due to the fact that it's also an opportunity for our community members to learn, you know, gas versus electric at that very local level with their actual lawnmower, and obviously the reduction in the emissions from that. So I don't know if there's anything that we can do, but because the AB 617 is a very constrained area, and that number, like I said, what are the numbers that it is that to put this, to do the trade-in for? I know it's like per person, but then it's the actual event itself, right? To do the whole process.
Sure, SB, I'll be happy to answer the questions as I think I understood them. And a couple things to note leading into further discussion if necessary. Certainly the AB 617 communities have higher funding levels per lawnmower. So in our traditional valley-wide program, we can do up to $250 per lawnmower. Within the AB 617, we can provide up to $500 per lawnmower based on the needs of the community there. Historically, we found that about, you know, we've spent a little less than 500,000 over the last several years within that program, utilizing our traditional rebate method. I think, you know, more to your question, I think you were asking about whether or not there's opportunities to do events.
Yeah.
Those events, as we combine them with the repair program, kind of moving forward, we're looking at that model. They are, you know, they are costly. Each event will kind of depend on size and, you know, kind of various parameters that are associated with securing those locations and how many people. But I think the key kind of thing is looking for opportunities to try and get more lawnmowers out there and try and make sure people are aware of the program at $250 or so. And we do have lower rebates. A lot of people now, they might not have a gas lawnmower to replace, but we have rebates. They can get up to $100 to just buy a new one, excuse me, up to $50 to buy a new one if they don't have a gas powered one. So we're seeing a lot of people kind of take advantage more of the rebates where they don't have a lawnmower to replace as well. So we're able to provide, in essence, like thousands of rebates over the years, over the year with the funding that we have. It sounds to me like that lawnmower program is a kind of a priority of yours. So kind of leave it to your committee to decide how that gets folded into any recommendations you have. But hopefully that answers the question. And I think,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
it
we're looking
answers-
for more opportunities to do those type of events for sure.
Right. It was highly successful. And to your point, since Valley County already does the vehicle trade-in and the smog, you know, and if that's added to it, you know, whether it's the $100 rebate or the 250, you know, what does that cost look like, and how can we prioritize funding with that, with those events to just like, you know, piggyback on what they're already doing. It just, you know, it makes sense. And then that way we can take care of the smog, the vehicle trade-in, and the lawnmower all at the same time. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, and now I'll go to Randeep in Bakersfield.
Actually, I had a question. These are great recommendations, all the 6 here, but yeah, do these all come down from the higher level of the state? Or are these items that the community have some sort of like participation in choosing from?
Is that a question for me? Or I wasn't sure if it was a question for me or internal discussion.
I guess whoever would know. I mean, I'm just wondering where these recommendations come from and if the community can possibly vote on alternatives or, other
Yeah.
options.
So the 6 recommendations that are on the paperwork before you are derived from your committee and ultimately approved by the full Environmental Justice Advisory Group annually. So to the extent that folks were available to provide public input or comment, that's the opportunity to kind of voice their concerns or issues there. And certainly, we've heard your feedback that we incorporate into development of our budget and spending plan, which is a public process as well. But these 6 particular recommendations are your group's recommendations to us from last. Yes, thanks, Ryan. From last year.
Okay.
So there's an opportunity. You can keep these, you can add to them, you can subtract from them as you all see fit this afternoon.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and Derek, do you have any comments,
Comments and
questions?
questions, yeah, a little of each. Thank you, Madam Chairman. So just to carry on, piggyback on what you were talking about for Randeep down there. I've been on the grants committee through the development of all the 6 core. We've gone through a lot of members who have come and gone over the years and have done that, but these actually were developed by this committee and then approved by the large committee. So these are from us. And then a lot of people that were on the committee over the years brought these ideas or recommendations in from people that they had been talking to that couldn't come to the meeting, but they had their constituents. So this is basically public generated by the committee here and then approved by them. The reason the 6 are on here, this has sort of been the core over the years. We actually have not really changed this now for a while because these are the main core items that we had funding for and that we wanted to make sure that they stayed on here so the district could always go back and solicit for these funds because these were some of the main programs that they were funding. They're not all little ones. Some of them are pretty big ones. And so it's been a good thing. I just had one question on the lawnmower thing that she was talking about. Is my understanding that people can actually get more money if they just get it through the 617 program, which we have no say on that. That's right. The 617, we can't make recommendations on that. That's coming from their source.
That is correct. So within the development of each CERP, the Community Emission Reduction Program that each community developed, one of their priorities was to provide up to the full cost of a new lawnmower to residents within the 617 communities. So you have to be a resident of the 617 communities. And then over the years, we've done these weekend events. Typically, they've been on a Saturday. Sometimes they've been on a weeknight where people can show up. They basically have a reservation. They've kind of applied to us ahead of time, bring their old lawnmower, and they leave with a new lawnmower. And it's essentially at no cost to them. So we can provide, based on approval from CARB and the development of the CERP and input from the community, up to $500 for a lawnmower. The lawnmowers that we
From 617.
from 617 under the Valley-wide program, it's up to $250.
And then you have the vouchers on top of that. So any changes, if we made a change on here on lawnmowers, because I mean, I'm not against doing that, but I don't know that we can actually, it would get us any more money than what you're already doing. It would be my question.
I think that's correct.
Basically, it's going to be, you're already putting as much as you can put into it. Nothing we would do here with that would change anything.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
would it?
we take recommendations, the dollar amounts that are being proposed as part of the recommendations that were provided by Brian. Oh, let me take a step back. Ryan Hashi, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer. the amounts, it's based on like historical usage of the programs. That's where we base a lot of this on. A lot of the things that Brian highlighted, like the factors that go into the choices, like things like cost effectiveness. So like a lot of people will say, bang for your buck, like, how much emissions are we getting versus how much we're spending. So like a program like this, while the emissions themselves aren't as significant as, say, replacing an old diesel engine. So those are some of the factors that we have to go into in making that. So we try to find that sweet spot where we see the demand and trying to allocate that level of funding for that. So that's how that recommendation came up. And for Randeep, I know we've done AB 617 updates for you, but the whole purpose of that program was really the state legislation was passed, and it identified very specific communities that were facing disproportionate amounts of localized air pollution. And so it gave the state went through a process of selecting very specific communities with those circumstances and allowed them to work with air districts on developing programs specific to that area, looking to reduce the localized air pollution. And so understanding that the immediacy, the need of getting emission reductions in that localized area allowed us to develop what are called community identified project plans. And it's specific community by community throughout the state. And it allows us to develop specific guidelines that only apply to those small areas. So while, valley-wide, getting emission reductions from lawnmowers isn't as effective as, say, getting rid of an old diesel engine, but in those communities, there may not be those sources of pollution that that you can look to get there. So like we really had to put our heads together and find ways to get actual emission reductions in those communities. And so one of them was lawnmowers, and so that we took advantage of it. And
But it also does, like she said, it also helped make people aware of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Which can roll over into other areas. So what I'm seeing here, we're talking about, for her, what she's talking about would be the commercial lawn and garden for $4 million. Is that where that money is coming from then?
It's the residential lawn and garden.
Yeah.
And
So there's two different ones. Yeah, there's commercial.
Is that in here too? Did I miss it?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to find it real quick.
There's on the bottom of slide 8
6, 7,
is the
8.
residential lawn and garden
Thank you. We
bucket
got
for like the
500,000.
valley-wide program. So that's available to anybody in the valley.
Yeah, and the 4 million is for commercial.
I understand. So would we have to change this if we wanted to ask you to up that to up that to $1 million? Or
So I
could
think-
we make that, could we do that just?
And what I recall about some of these discussions in the past, it was maybe a little bit less about specific dollar amounts and more about where you wanted to see certain dollars go. So if residential lawn and garden was a priority that you wanted to add, we could add a paragraph of ensuring that there was funding available throughout the valley for residential lawn and garden projects, something along those lines.
Is that something SB would like to see?
Yeah, I think that the 500,000 is like a really low number just for residents for the whole entire valley, because all of the events that we've had in AB 617 communities have been, very just, engaging, positive. I think we even have a wait list, if I'm not mistaken, because there's so many people. Once we did it, in Stockton, I had seen the ones that we did in the other parts of the valley, but the other residents obviously can't participate because it's not a straight trade-in, because there's still a gap in funding. But even if we were to facilitate that through the programs that already exist, like with Valley Can, they're still getting, the electric lawnmower. We're still taking the gas ones out of service, however it is that works out. So, but 500,000, it just seemed like a really low number. I know it's a rebate, but being more proactive in taking this to what already exists. We have Valley Can doing the vehicles, so let's just attach this component. And then I'm sure there's, I know you just threw out the $1 million, it's 500 right now. if there was money that could be moved around, but, you know, to Brian's point, then like, if it's just added on, we want to recommend that, this be added to our priority list because it's at that, I know these are larger items, you know, the heavy duty engines, what have you, but this helps facilitate on the outreach piece to be able to have the individual residents get this and then, you know, the district making that commitment to them. Especially, you know, since, you know, we're talking about EJ communities. So that was my argument.
No, and yeah, appreciate the thought behind the comments, SB, definitely. I think anytime you're thinking about making, you know, changes to a program, before you start off with adjusting the dollar amount, I think if you make the changes and then you see the demand, that's what creates, you know, the potential for changing the dollar amounts, you know, for different programs. The dollar amount that's in there right now is based on what we've actually seen the demand for it. I understand what you're saying, like if you maybe change some things that you may see an increase in demand. But any dollar that is put into one program doesn't go into another program. And so the dollars for these come from different funding sources than, for example, AB 617. And so we'd have to pull money away from maybe another program where we already have, and we know we have high demand. Many of the items in here that we already see oversubscription to them. And so you know, we're already having to limit funds for those ones because, you know, at the end of the day, we're limited in the amount of funding that we have for all the programs.
And it's going to get worse. We know there's going to be more funding cuts coming. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely very cognizant of that as well. Yeah, there's
So I guess my question.
It is going to be challenging with the state of the state budget and a lot of other factors.
One of my
we're
responses.
We're working very hard to ensure the Valley still gets its fair share.
My concern would be that I know that with the timing situation, one of the reasons we do this the way we do it every year is we want to be able to get this approved at the next committee because you guys then have to take this and get your budget thing put together and get this attached to it and get it to Sacramento, get it to CARB. So I know you have some time constraints on that too, and it's already end of January. So
but, you know, one thing that like Brian was saying, I think, you know, potentially adding it as, you know, an EJAG recommendation in the budget overall, you know, shows that this is an area that EJAG, you know, sees value and benefit in having as one of the focal areas.
would you prefer to see this document go on through and then we just do that on the record? So it's in the minutes and it's just a recommendation to you? Without having to change the document and wait and come back to redo and we vote on a new document?
Yeah.
Can we do it that way?
So
So we get both?
It's entirely up to the committee on how you want to handle that. You know, we do have a meeting scheduled for February. So with the understanding that there may be, you know, some desire to see some changes, but you know, alternatively, if the you know committee feels like they would like to adopt what is here, that's also.
When's our next EJAG meeting?
Isn't that today though? I mean, isn't that what we're attempting to
definitely.
achieve?
Yeah,
That
definitely.
if you were to add a recommendation, I mean, we could
do that.
add that and
Yeah.
then as part of your discussion here later on this evening, that could be included. If you want to provide some language or I could take a swing at writing something up for your consideration and use. It sounds to me that this may be a priority, and I think we can try and incorporate some language that prioritizes, you know, or asks that we look into trying to hold events for environmental justice communities, similar to what we've done in 617,
I
something
wrote
along
one
those
for
lines.
5. I'm happy to sit down while you guys are doing stuff and write them.
So yes, so that was my understanding is that what we decide here, we also, when we reconvene as the EJAG group, we adopt or further tweak or whatever. So that is my understanding.
That's
Before,
correct.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Do I need to ask for public comment? Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there, seeing any members of the public in Fresno? Seeing none and none online.
Okay, thank you. Then I would like to propose that we add the paragraph regarding the residential lawn yard equipment. Because I also agree that that is important. Whether that means that we get money for it. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to shift things if we're going to put more money into it, if we see that it requires or necessitates more money. Hopefully one of the other programs will start to decrease and we can shift that way. So I would like to propose that we do that. We propose to adopt what we have here and add the 7th paragraph with the residential equipment. And do I need a vote? Correct. Okay, so I need a motion and a second on that. Anybody?
This is SB. I can make the motion to add the paragraph to include the residential lawnmower. And I believe that Brian's helping us write that statement. So I make the motion to add that to include it as we move forward with our EJAG meeting.
I think Brian and Eric or Derek, I'm sorry. Brian and Derek are both scribbling here.
Okay.
Randeep, are you willing to second that motion?
Yes, I will.
Okay, then I'll call for the roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Vielma,
Yes.
Mr. Graywell,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Gutiel.
Yes,
Okay, through the chair, motion passes.
great. Okay. Okay, so then do I need to ask for public comments one more time?
Okay, second opportunity for public comments. Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Any public comments in Fresno? Seeing none and none online.
Okay.
I have one I can read.
Okay, so before we move on to number 8, Derek has taken a very quick stab at a paragraph.
That they can take part of or.
So go ahead and read that
Okay,
now.
so I have item number 7, residential lawn and garden. That funds be set aside and allocated for the residential lawn and garden program, a program that not only successfully provides for change out of lawnmowers, but also can be extremely beneficial in community understanding of the importance of clean air efforts. Funds to be subject to the discretion of the district. You can't really set the dollar amount on you. You have to do it based on all those other factors. You can take that or leave it, use any of it, use none of it.
The only maybe suggestion I'd add is that we can put in, part of the notes I had was just, we can utilize our existing rebate process or identify opportunities for exchange events in environmental justice communities, something along those lines. So I think the key is that we're utilizing our existing program and we'll look at the feasibility of holding exchange events as we kind of move
Okay.
forward.
So the last
Does that
sentence
make
I
sense?
have are funds to be subject to the discretion of the district, utilizing existing program parameters. SB? Adds it on the list as a priority.
Yeah, so to like what Brian had said regarding the existing programs that
Yep.
we have that are in place for
I put it on
engagement.
there.
Yeah.
So we can take a vote on accepting this document then now, and then we can move it on.
Okay. I think we already took that vote.
So what we can do is,
Okay.
you can work with Brian and then get it on paper, and then when we convene for the actual EJAG meeting.
Right, we
At
can
that
take-
point.
Don't we need a motion to take this, to submit this draft to be worked on and then brought back to the next meeting?
I feel like the intent of the vote that we just did was,
We'll cover that.
was
Yes.
to cover
Okay, then I'm
that.
just gonna give this to you and you
Yeah.
can play with this between now and the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm seeing SB nod her head that she,
Yeah, that's what was my understanding too, that
okay,
what was being written up between Derek and Brian, that's what we were gonna go with moving forward.
okay. Okay, great. Then we will move on. Okay, so then, at this point, number 8 is suggested items for next EJAG Grants Committee meeting, which will probably be sometime this time next year. Does anybody have anything to suggest?
Very early.
It can always be, we can always, as the year goes on, throw in suggestions to Brian and Jess, as the year progresses. So
Hmm.
we don't have to have something today.
Madam Chair. You could actually, from time to time, throw that on the regular meeting agenda as it just would be suggested items, just like it says here for the grants committee. They could be brought in as they come, set aside and held on to until we have our next meeting.
That's a great idea. That's really great idea,
Mm.
Eric.
Rick or Derek, take it back.
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time with my Ds lately.
I'll go with Rick.
Okay, Rick. Okay, so then I'll move on to number 9 and ask for any EJAG member comments. And we could start in Bakersfield with Randeep if you have any comments you'd like to share.
I just wanted to maybe provide a suggestion. I don't want to mess things up, but bicycle lane infrastructure. Is there a possible way to add hiking trails into that budget? I feel like the long-term health effects, along with getting people to get outside, would be beneficial that we could kind of incorporate into that same category. But that's just a suggestion and possibly something that we can leave for next grants committee meeting.
Okay. Making myself notes.
Can I respond to that? I'm sure.
Is it already? Yes.
What do you do? Yeah. Randeep, I just had an idea. Between now and the next meeting, we could anybody who's interested can reach out locally, like through our county parks and things like that, and find out where opportunities for those kind of things would be, so that we could bring those things back right now, we don't have any information, but that we could use this year to gather information and bring it back for the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, and then I'll turn it over to SB and Modesto. Do you have any comments?
No, just to thank the staff for assisting with this whole process and clarification. And in terms of just getting some additional information, I'll follow up. I just wanted to get some clarification to take back to our community members, because I know we have a limited time and we know what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. So so I'll go ahead and follow up with Brian on some of those, just in terms of further details. But other than that, again, just, thank you for working with us and the presentation itself. Thanks.
Okay.
My last comment would
Your
be,
last comment.
yep, I want to thank everybody for being here, that we had a quorum. Thank you for that. And thank you for staff for being here an hour early, and it's a long day for you.
Yes, and I too echo that. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the staff. It's always, budgets are always a big, big job. So I appreciate everybody's help. And so with that, I think we can adjourn. Thank you all. We'll see you in a few more minutes.
Yep, 10 minutes.
1, 2.
Are we all set in the Modesto and Bakersfield offices?
Yes, we're ready here in Bakersfield.
Okay, I will hand it over to the chair at this time.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here's some guidelines and instructions. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio from members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. I will call the meeting to order at this time and ask the clerk for a roll call, please.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Martinez? Mr. Graywall?
Here.
Mr. Freitas? Ms. Gutile?
Here.
Ms. Vielma?
Here.
Mr. Helm?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Matthews? Mr. Crier? Mr. Leba? Mr. Sanders?
Here.
Mr. Cunha? Mr. McLaughlin? Through the chair, it looks like Ms. Martinez has joined us and we have a quorum.
Ms. Martinez, are you here yet or not?
I think I am. Sorry for being late.
No worries. Thank you for being here. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the meeting, we do have 2 new members on our EJAG group, EJAG board at this time. With us right at this moment is Ms. Reina Rodriguez, and she's filling a small business owner seat. And my notes tell me that Naimeen and Manuel Cunha worked on your appointment through the subcommittee. Welcome. And if you'd like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Thank you. Reina Rodriguez from Tulare, California. I've lived in Tulare County practically all my life. I'm a small business owner and small farmer and just happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate you wanting to donate your time to something that I think we all can get behind, clean air. Patricia Matthews is our other new person. She is running just a little bit behind. So
Which county or what?
I believe she's
our Citizens Advisory City Representative,
yes,
and she is from Lemoore.
from Lemoore.
So she's taking over Richard O'Brien's spot on the EJAG.
So whenever she is able to join us, when it makes sense in our agenda, I'll have her go ahead and introduce herself and let us know where she comes from, where she's going, and what she's all about. Okay, so then we will go on to item 3, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions from the EJAG members? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto on the minutes?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any public comments in Bakersfield on the minutes?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the October minutes? Seeing none and no comments online.
Okay, then I will, sorry. The minutes are approved as submitted. Thank you all. And then now on to item number 4, public comments. This time is made available for comments from the public on matters that are not on the agenda. It is requested that no comments be made during this period on items on the agenda. The public may make comments on each EJAG agenda item during the time allowed for public comments. Attention is called to the fact that the EJAG is prohibited by law from taking any action or on discussion of matters that are not on the agenda. Please call for.
Okay, any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and none online.
Okay, and then number 5 is chair comments. At this time, again, thank you all for being here and for donating your time to this committee. And with that, we'll go on. If we could have item number 6, update on attainment plans and rules, please.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Reina. Reina actually has helped with the Spanish interpretation for all of our workshops over the last couple of years. So really happy to have you here. I am Emily Nealon. I'm the Director of Air Quality Planning, and I have a couple of updates for you all today. First, for our planning projects for the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard, I previously let you all know that we had submitted an attainment date extension request for that standard, extending the attainment date from 2023 to 2024 based on clean air quality data in 2023. EPA on November 19th had finalized their approval of that 1-year extension. So now our attainment date is officially extended through the end of 2024. And really happy to note that based on the preliminary data that we're seeing for 2024, looking at a 3-year design value for 2022, 23, and 24, it's looking like we are in attainment of the standard. So we're currently going through our data validation process to get that submitted over to CARB and to EPA to get an official clean data determination. So really exciting news. The second of my updates for the planning side is for the 2024 revised PM 2.5 standard. Today, CARB Governing Board had a public hearing to adopt their staff designation recommendations for non-attainment areas throughout California for the standard, and recommended that the San Joaquin Valley be designated as non-attainment of the standard. So now following that approval, CARB will be submitting those recommendations to EPA, and EPA is expected to do their final designations in February of 2026. At which time we would be required to submit a moderate SIP or state implementation plan 1.5 years after that designation is final. For our rule development efforts, first, we committed to amend several of our coding rules per our ozone contingency package for the 2008 and the 2015 8-hour ozone standards. So we actually did kick off this public process in December. We had a scoping meeting, and we plan to schedule an additional public workshop here in the coming months. So I will return to you with updates on that process. And secondly, we are also conducting a rule development process for our wood burning fireplaces and wood burning heaters rule, our rule 4901. This is consistent with our 2024 PM 2.5 plan. We committed to looking at extending the wood burning curtailment season through the end of March. And so just wanted to update you that we plan to schedule a public workshop here in the next coming months, likely after the wood burning season is concluded, to not confuse the public, to start that process. So that concludes my updates, but I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have.
Okay. Thank you for that update. I appreciate it. Is there any member comments from Bakersfield?
I'm sorry, member or public comment?
Member comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. Are there any member comments or questions from Modesto?
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Just a very quick comment. I think we used to get handouts with the information for the rules and stuff in writing. I didn't get one today. I might have missed it in the email. but it's a lot easier to follow along with the information. It can get very technical when we have the printout. So just mentioning that.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for bringing that up, Thomas. We did have the handout for this meeting, so I apologize that you didn't receive it, but we'll be sure to send it over to you after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also through the chair, it should be in the email attachments for the agenda packet that went out last Friday.
Yeah, I did see the through the email. Is that not what we have here? This is it, right? You don't have this on your,
No, but I just double checked. I did get it in the email. I just didn't print it out and I didn't have one here. But
Okay.
maybe just an oversight. Thanks.
no, that's okay. Okay, any comments, questions? Here, go ahead, Naomi.
Thank you. It's not here, but I've been asking about this in previous meetings. And I think something like that was excluded in your December meeting, but I wasn't able to listen to the meeting or attend. What about the indirect source rule?
Do you have a specific question regarding?
Yes, I know that during the workshops for the PM 2.5 plans, we have been mentioning that, that rule is very outdated, that it will be good to start a process of revising it. So, and we heard that one of the hesitations was to find out what was going to happen in LA, but that has been settled. So are there any plans to bring this up and, start looking into improving it?
Okay, thanks, Naimeen, for that question and for the clarification. At this time, we do not have it scheduled or committed to amend our ISR rule, but we have been very closely looking at the South Coast rule and comparing it to our rule. So with our future planning projects, we will evaluate if for all of our rules, but including the ISR rule, if there's opportunities. So thanks for the question.
Okay.
I'm just curious. Did we ever have any, do you guys, there was some reports released last week. I think it was either Standard, UCLA, or Riverside on the fires down in LA. They're talking about these wildfires. Do we ever have anything that's in these standard rules plans that are adaptive? Is there any adaptive language or give us the ability to make changes or augment the plan in any way based on these wildfires? Because it seems like we're coming into a new century of dealing with these. They're more occurring more
Yeah, definitely.
commonly.
So with our attainment plans, actually in the base modeling for our attainment plans, a lot of the time we do include some level of wildfires. So our future data does include some of those impacts. We are able to do what's called exceptional events to write off the impacts of wildfires. And as far as a rule goes, we do have some rules for prescribed burning. So we do work with our local agencies to help approve and evaluate potential prescribed burning projects to try and mitigate some of that risk. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, Derek Williams. I'm glad Samir's here because I was curious about something. Do you guys do you do any strategizing or talking about what might happen if EPA decides to roll some of these standards back? Are you prepared for that?
When you refer to standards, do you mean some of the PM 2.5
Let's say that
standards?
they decided to roll back the 9 micrograms or even the 12 micrograms and go back to 35 microgram and say that's going to be the standard. Or how would the district handle that? Do you have contingency plans for what you would do in that situation?
So at this point, it's very early on in the 9 microgram planning process. And so that's something we've not been speaking about because it is a finalized standard. We will, adapt and evaluate that if that does come up. Our attainment plans for the other PM 2.5 standards still stand. We're still pursuing those attainment strategies, implementing the measures and achieving the reduction. So ultimately that helps us get towards that ultimate goal of 9. But that's something we'll evaluate if that happens. Can't exactly speak to it
Something
yet.
somebody to think about.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Let me ask if
Somebody else.
Rena. Rena, do you have any comments or questions? Okay. Go ahead, Keith.
Have you been instructed by anyone, or do you plan on hardening the attainment plans rules for in the inevitability that the federal EPA comes in with a Doge type program? Do you guys, have you been instructed to harden these plans or rules in any way?
No, not at this point.
Okay, at this point, I'll ask the clerk for any public comments.
Are there any public comments on this item in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Any public comment in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this? Seeing none and none online.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we will move on to item number 7. Discuss and approve EJAG incentive spending plan recommendations for the 2025-2026 budget.
Okay, maybe I'll start off through the chair.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
So EJAG plays a pivotal role in working to help ensure our grant programs serve our underserved and low income and environmental justice communities throughout the valley. The grants subcommittee met just prior to this meeting. They discussed and approved a set of recommendations for the district's upcoming budget. Their recommendations are then presented to the membership as a whole to consider and approve. Those approved recommendations are then passed along to the district leadership as they finalize the district's incentive spending plan. As part of the budget subcommittee, they did have one recommended change, and so we worked on drafting some additional language for the recommendations. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to the chair for discussion and consideration.
Okay, yes, thank you. The committee did have a recommendation to add. We added a 7th paragraph regarding residential, and all of us here in Fresno have the updated document with the 7th paragraph. I apologize that it wasn't given to Bakersfield or Modesto in time.
We
I don't think
actually
it
do
was-
have that here in Bakersfield.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
We
Staff
have
is
it in
on
Modesto also.
Oh, great. Staff is on it and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So the new paragraph is regarding residential lawn and garden equipment. And it states that funds be set aside and allocated for Clean Green Yard Machine Program, residential lawn and garden, a program that not only successfully provides for the change out of lawnmowers, but also can be extremely beneficial in community understanding of the importance of clean air efforts. Funds to be subject to the discretion of the district and utilizing existing program processes, as well as exploring the opportunity for lawnmower exchange events to benefit residents in environmental justice communities. So at this point, I'll open it up for discussion on adopting this document. And we can start here in Fresno first. Oh. I'll take just kind of a sidestep. Ms. Patricia Matthews has arrived. Would you like to take just a quick moment to introduce yourself?
I'm Patricia Matthews.
Okay.
Was that quick enough?
Sure. Thank you. Okay. So back to the document at hand. I'll open it up to discussion for, let's start here in Fresno. If anyone has anything to discuss about it. Okay, about the whole thing, but I'm going to start with Naimeen. She had her hand up first.
Thank you. So the question is, I see under paragraph 3, light duty passenger vehicles, that not only include the vehicles, but apparently bicycle voucher component. But then there's a separate paragraph for bicycle voucher, so I don't know if we need to have it in paragraph 3. And also, can you say more about, I believe the year right now of when a vehicle is eligible for the replacement program is still 2006?
Yeah, so a couple comments on that. Yes, the eligible vehicles for replacement in order to participate in our vehicle replacement program is 2006 and older. We've seen a lot of demand in that program and participation across the valley. And so we're also in the process of advocating for additional funding for the program to meet needs, but this particular paragraph number 3 in terms of EJAG's priorities has been to continue to support the implementation of our repair programs, which are operated through weekend events, and the replacement program, which provides opportunities for low-income and disadvantaged community residents to replace their older vehicles. You mentioned 2006 and older with a cleaner alternative, including battery electric or plug-in hybrid options. And those replacement vehicles can be new or used. They just have to be within the last 8 model years. So at this point now it's 2025. That goes back to 2018. So as long as it's within that range, it's eligible as a replacement vehicle anyway.
I understand. Can I ask a follow-up question? But my question is, why is it mentioned to include a bicycle voucher component? But then on paragraph 3, but we have a completely separate paragraph for bicycle, non-combustion motorcycle vehicles. So what's the difference between
So
the two?
what I recall from previous discussions with the EJAG on this particular topic, within the funding that we have for the vehicle replacement program, instead of getting a vehicle, somebody could elect to get an electric bike.
Oh, okay.
And that's an incentive option. And so it was prioritized in this section to tie along and give, or at least express EJAG's preference or direction to give people an opportunity to get a bike instead of a car. The further paragraph number 5 was included as sort of its own standalone comment and not necessarily tied into the vehicle replacement process or program as well. So they're certainly very similar. I think the needs or maybe the priorities are slightly different in terms of how they're outlined in the document.
So one is a replacement, the other one you just apply
Just-
for funding.
yeah,
Okay. And I promise the last one. So 2006, I mean, it sounds like those are really old vehicles. Has there been any consideration to change that year? Like, I know it used to be 1999, then we moved to 2006. I've been approached by people, they say, well, my car is 2007, I'm missing it by this much. So I know that the program has been very successful replacing and getting old cars out of, the roads, but could it be considered or not because of the high demand?
Yeah, I think it's something that we always want to take a look at, ensure that the program meets the needs of the participants. At this point, we've had to shut down applications actually in December because we're oversubscribed. We're currently working with CARB and other stakeholder groups to advocate for additional funding. I think we want to make sure that we have, kind of right-size the program for the funding that we have available. Those older cars, there is an emissions, difference between a 2006 and older and a 2007 and newer in terms of looking at the benefit that we get from those projects. So but I think in terms of like how much demand that we've had, there's certainly a lot of people that have those older vehicles out there. Moving forward, I think it's something we can look at and try and evaluate with the funding that we have available with that support, kind of expanding the pool of potential participants for the program for sure.
One other point on paragraph 5, that really deals with the bicycle infrastructure as well, the main focus of that recommendation.
Thank you. Keith?
Is there do you guys have any provisions for, in any of these non-combustible motorized vehicles, do you have provisions for the difference between a hybrid EV and then a fully charged vehicle. Is there any kind of difference you guys see between those two?
I don't want to steal any thunder. If you're up for it, go for it. So within our, particularly the vehicle replacement program, it does provide options, whether you would like to select a battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid vehicle, which would operate off of electricity, but also you can utilize gas to help power and charge the vehicle. Really, those are the two options at this point for folks, and we try and identify what's going to work best for them. Some folks, might be able to utilize a battery electric vehicle because their typical commute or their daily driving can support that. Certainly with the plug-in vehicle, it reduces range anxiety and gives people the opportunity to travel further. So, and just in terms of program implementation, the only difference is trying to make sure that we provide options for folks that are gonna meet their needs. We also have to follow, direction provided from CARB in terms of grant amounts for various vehicles and what types of vehicles that we can offer funding for. So we do have constraints on us in terms of program implementation as well.
What's your authority and scope in being able to move money? You guys, I thought I heard earlier, you guys, it's like a Peter Paul thing where you take money from Peter to give to Paul in these programs. Do you guys do that? Or did I understand that correctly?
So go ahead, Ryan. Okay. Within the grants budget that we do have, there are some buckets of funding that are prescribed to very specific sources. For example, with our vehicle replacement program, we get a grant from CARB that provides us the funding and the mechanism and the direction on how we're going to implement that fund. We can only use that funding associated with that grant for that particular funding source. The Carl Moyer program or the farmer program, for instance, might have a dozen categories of projects that we can fund. And those are very prescribed as well. We have a little bit of discretion on, say, for instance, the DMV fees that we collect and can utilize for program implementation, and that our board has established various programs that they want to see funded. And so we can kind of put buckets together and fund them at levels that we think will meet the sufficient demand. But if we did take money from one category, for example, if we were to take it from our repair program, which might be one of the discretionary buckets that we have, and put it into the tractor program, it's finding that right balance because there's only a limited number of resources to go around, essentially. So there can be some shuffling, but we do our best to right size it for what we've seen in the past in terms of what we're going to need to support those programs.
That happens internally with staff. You don't have to go outside to ask for any permission.
As part of the budget process that we're going through right now. Yeah.
Okay, then I will turn it over to Modesto. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rena.
No worries. I think just being new, I do have a few questions. But I definitely agree with Naomi. So I am very cautious with not over investing in vehicles. So, I can say that even my 2008 is saying goodbye to me, and its mileage is really, really up there. So I can imagine that having a consideration to really get into the 2008, 2010 would be considerate of the families who are probably like me and don't change vehicles very often, but are very high up in mileage and probably needing this type of support. Some of us don't need the support, but for the families who do, I think that it would be good to not put them in a situation where, we're jeopardizing any possible opportunity of them being able to get into a clean vehicle or a cleaner vehicle or a more reliable vehicle, because they've been stuck with that 2008 or that 2010 for the past 14 years. So 15 going on 15. So I think that would be important to take a look at. And also maybe as a resident from Tulare County, and just because we don't, I don't know enough, but it would be great to know where maybe have some charting of where funding has been spent, see how equitable the process has been. Maybe I need to do, come in and do a great job of making sure that my community or the people around me know about these programs, because maybe not enough of my community members have really, utilize the programs. So I would love to see some charting with, where the money is being spent, who's utilizing, where the funding is being spent, so that I can do proper outreach to make sure that the community members around me, if they're not utilizing it enough, that we do better outreach and communications with the community. So I think that that's something that I would love to see, just to give me a better idea of where money has been spent.
You have a comment?
Yes, I understand perfectly what she just said.
So I just briefly wanted to say, thank you to the committee that met ahead of time for this and worked on this. And for staff, they did a great job putting that thing together really quickly. This just goes to show that this is a living document that can be added to or detracted from whenever we need to. And SB, thank you for bringing that to our attention, so we can be able to get that on there. And we still have our 6 core items that we are kind of the more higher dollar items that have the larger impact on air quality, but even the small ones can be important. So I just want to say thank you to everybody and voice my support for this document. I'm really glad that we were able to get it to bring to you, because we want to be able to help the district finalize with our approval, so they can move on and take this and get to work with their finalizing on their budgeting recommendations. And they have this as part of the package that they submit when they go after the money. So this is great, because we're doing our part by getting this done in a timely manner like this. That's all my comment. Thank you, guys.
Patricia, did you have anything at this time? Okay. So then I will go to Modesto, SB, and Thomas, if you've got any questions, comments.
Yeah, we've probably gone over this in the past before, but I'm forgetting, so I figured I'd ask it now. The thing that jumped out at me the most was that the largest expenditure, 140, call it 7 million, is for ag equipment replacement. The next largest thing is 34 million for the drive clean replacement. Is that because of the funding sources, like with the farmer program that has to be used on ag equipment? Is it based on the reductions that you get out of replacing farm equipment more than cars? I just hear a lot that the drive clean programs are always running out of money, and they're always so popular, and they're always a backlog. I'm just wondering if there was a reason for such a large discrepancy in those line items.
Before Brian jumps in there, I just wanted to point out that there also is a big weight for the ag programs as well.
Yeah, so I'll take a swing at your question to the chair, Thomas, and really good question. And it's a little bit into the weeds, so I'll do my best to try and explain maybe why you see some of those discrepancies, and hopefully that'll be helpful, but happy to answer to the extent needed here. So you correctly noted the ag tractor program, ag replacement program is kind of the biggest bucket there for kind of a variety of reasons. Number one, as you mentioned, the farmer funding that we did receive is very, very substantial. And that does provide direction to fund it, to fund ag equipment very specifically. And there's a couple categories that we fund within the farmer program. Those emission reductions are also extremely cost effective. So replacing those old diesel tractors with newer equipment gets just a significant, very significant amount of emission reductions. And so I think Ryan mentioned bang for your buck earlier in our grant in the subcommittee meeting. We get a tremendous bang for the buck in terms of cost effectiveness with those projects, and helping us reduce particulate matter throughout the valley helps us with our overall air quality attainment goals. But as mentioned, that farmer funding is specifically dedicated for those types of projects. We can't take that funding and utilize it for vehicle replacement, for example. Vehicle replacement actually is only funded through our Clean Cars for All program. That's really the only mechanism that we have. And so that 35 million that, as you noted in the budget, is kind of specifically what we had through the grant agreements we have with CARB to spend money on those vehicle replacement projects. So when we talk about how money is allocated, a lot of it has to do with what are the strings attached, if you will, with the funding that we have received, because a lot of our grant program budget really is kind of dedicated to very specific funding sources and funding project options. And what we've kind of looked for from the EJAG committee and through this process is kind of what would your priorities be in terms of types of projects moving forward. And then depending on what those funding sources that we might have to support those priorities kind of helps inform how those are funded and prioritized throughout our budget process. We're in January now. This discussion helps inform the budget process that we go through from now until June, when our budget's adopted and then implemented in the next fiscal year. So that's the numbers that you have in front of you that we're quoting are for the current fiscal year, and kind of what we were able to put together based on your priorities from previous discussions and ultimately approved by our board through the public budget process that they have. So hopefully that addressed some of your questions there. That it is a process to go through to identify which funding sources can be used and the types of projects that we can spend the money on.
A quick follow-up. Oh, it's already on, I guess.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the car replacement programs have a process for verifying income information, and that there is a threshold for being lower income. Is there a similar process for the ag equipment replacement programs? Is there a process for prioritizing smaller farmers, lower income operations?
So there's not necessarily the same income process. There is priority provided for smaller farmers. We've done a lot of outreach to smaller farmers. So it is a key goal of that program to reach those smaller farmers who might be most in need of the funding that we have available. That is a key strategy.
And I'm remembering a conversation where there was maybe not an exact definition of a small farmer, but something around like under 100 acres or something like that. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, let me jump in on this one if you don't, through the chair.
I'm now,
Only through the chair.
I
though.
don't know. Are you public
Yeah.
or are you?
Let me introduce myself first. I have to say
Go
hello
ahead,
to all my
sir.
friends, first of all, and thank you, just through the chair, if I could take a second, only because I work very closely. I just have a natural loud voice anyway, and welcome, by the way, Patricia and Raina, good to see you guys. Yeah, I just want to be very specific on the farmer program, and Thomas, good to see you, my friend, as well. We have continued to really ratchet down and ratchet up, depending on how you look at it, but there's significantly greater funding for smaller farming operations. And so I think there are two different thresholds, below 100 acres and I believe below 500 acres, and that's total farm acres. That's not, individual farm, and you can have a lot of farms. It's like whatever you've got kind of in totality. And so we keep the what I would call the non-small. So that would be if you don't meet those two thresholds that I mentioned, I believe it's somewhere in the 50% target funding level, which by the way is substantially below what would they would actually be eligible for under the Moyer guidelines and the farmer guidelines. That we actually, instead of maximizing the funding that the state allows us to fund, we actually ratchet down on available funding if you don't meet the smaller criteria. And then we actually allow up to 60%, I believe, or up to 70% funding for the 500-acre level. And I believe it's up to like the 80% level for below 100 acres. So the funding is substantially different between the different farming sizes. And what we've actually seen as a result is a large uptake in that program by those smaller farming operations. So on a per acreage basis, on a per farm, I mean, we've seen, that's a program where no matter how much funding we put into the program, every single year, our backlog only grows. I mean, I think we're at over $450 million worth of projects that are currently in the queue in that program today. So while we may spend, 100, something million, you got about $300 million worth of projects that are not being funded. So we're actually very aggressively pursuing farmer funding this year in the state budget process. I'm just going to put a little plug here, but there's a coalition letter that's growing amongst environmental justice organizations as well as farming organizations. They're actually on the same page, I think, on the need for that funding and priority for small farmers. I just want to be very clear about that and I have to tell you, it was the EJAG in large part, with these conversations that have allowed for that recommendation to manifest itself into the program. So I just want to acknowledge that a lot of these programs have really been morphed over the years because of these conversations that are happening. So just circling back on that. Thank you for the time on that. And I don't plan on being here. I don't want to distract this very important, body from, I don't want to bore you with thoughts on the different topics, but I just wanted to, that was a very important question, Thomas, that you raised.
I knew it was a good question because they had to bring you in to answer it. Oh, thank you.
Brian was pretty much there. I just had to add a little more to it.
No, and I appreciate the comments, Samir. I really do.
I have a comment still in Modesto.
Go right ahead.
To the chair. Okay, so in terms of the clarification, Tom asking the question with regarding the funding, and I know we usually just kind of have a layout like for grants committee, what have you, and then when we go through presentations, we do know where the funding source is, but maybe moving forward, it might be more than one source of funding, but maybe like the key funding that kind of indicates where it comes from, as we move along in the process with new members, then it could just kind of highlight, it comes from like Carl Moyer or what have you, so that way folks just know, oh, this is the reason why, right? There's like very specific funding that we received through the state. And so that's just a little plug to do some kind of, just not to add more burden to staff, just more like highlighting where the funding comes from on the specific recommendations, like in this case for grants. And then just, I guess it's like more like a transparency and educational process, because I mean, we could probably find it ourselves, but since we're, trying to input and enhance, then, if we can maybe do that ask, for staff to do that for future. Thank you.
I did write down in my notes to myself for potential future EJAG meeting agenda items. And I'll work with Jess and Brian and staff on doing something like that, because I do think that that's important, because I mean, a few of us have been doing this a little while, and we still get kind of jumbled in where the funding's coming from, what program it is. Some specific thing may have 3 different funding sources, so I think that definitely would be helpful. So I'll work with staff on that to try to figure out how to do that moving forward. Keith, you got 1 minute.
Do you guys have any kind of special categories for prioritizing like there's been some electric tractors coming out now, all electric EVs. Do you guys have any kind of plan, or is it part of the program to prioritize those in the trade-in program?
It's certainly an option if there was a farmer that wanted, and I think we've had a couple that have expressed interest in deploying electric tractors. Certainly, you know, they're probably for tractors, they're on the step one of electric equipment. So depending on the needs of the farmer, it's really kind of up to them. It's not necessarily prioritized at this time over the cleanest diesel equipment in the sense that they're all eligible. There's no rule that necessarily requires the turnover of this equipment, so it's completely voluntary. You know, we certainly want the end user, in this case, the farmers, referencing a tractor to get equipment that's going to work for their needs. So if they decided that the electric equipment was going to work for their needs, then by all means, they're able to buy that. And if at this point, nobody's requiring that, so they can get the cleanest Tier 4 engines in their equipment, and we're still seeing substantial emission reductions from their old equipment, which in a lot of cases is very, very old, to the brand new equipment. You can achieve a lot of emission reductions from those processes.
For the second half of my 1 minute, do you know that Westlands Water District, for example, has installed a 130,000 acre solar, and in Kings County, they've installed 20,000 acre solar, designated that. So a lot of growers are going to be going to solar, and that would seem like it would be an incentivize farmers for charging these electrical tractors, because they're going to have these full-blown PPA solar systems in this 130,000 acres, and a whole total of 170,000 acres of solar. So anyway, I just wanted to see if there might be an opportunity there for incentivizing the system a little bit more.
Thank you.
So I do know of a couple of large farming operations that are experimenting with electric tractors, and they're putting in their own infrastructure to charge the tractors. But because there isn't any requirement yet, you know, it's not been, there hasn't been any talk about having to have that special funding for that specific category. I mean, it wouldn't work for me, but you know, I'm happy to support those that can do the experimentation and whatnot. Okay, I'm going to go to Bakersfield. I don't believe you have had a chance to chime in here.
Okay, John Sanders, Bakersfield. My question is, there's $100 million disparity between, well, you have a truck replacement program and ag equipment replacement program. And a lot of the truck replacement has to do with ag transportation. But also, you know, one of the other pushes with the environment is getting rid of oil wells. And a lot of that, the oil and gas departments, they're wanting to go over and, you know, make sure their fleets are right and use the electric equipment that's available that works. So I'm curious, is there some way to get oil and gas? Maybe they need to have their own fund, like a Moyer fund, but we can call it the abandoned oil well fund or something like that. What do we have to do to get to the status where we actually have a line item on here that says these type of companies can get this kind of funding?
Try and take a swing at answering that question to the extent I think I understand what you're saying is, you know, in a large part of what we have to look at in incentive programs is what are any regulatory requirements. At this time for ag equipment, there's no regulatory requirements. For trucks and other heavy duty diesel equipment, there have been long established regulatory requirements that require turnover and meeting certain emission limits with those engines. We can't fund something just to pay for compliance. We have to fund something that goes above and beyond the regulatory requirements. So it has to be well before a regulatory deadline, or it has to exceed the regulatory requirements. So for instance, in heavy duty trucks, at this point, there's regulations that have required their turnover by certain deadlines. So we can't just buy a new truck that would meet the standard that's out there. We would have to basically fund electric trucks or ultra low NOx trucks to the extent that they're available. If those were options that would be available, we certainly have funding to support those types of projects currently. As Samir mentioned, we have about $450 million in applications for our ag tractor program. We don't see the same type of demand in the truck program. And so there is certainly a big discrepancy in funding there, but there's also a discrepancy in the demand for those types of program funds as well. So John, if you were specifically asking about the trucks, there is funding available for those types of replacement projects. If you're talking about other types of activities that might occur in the oil fields, certainly, we don't have any existing types of programs for that because they're not established by state guideline or other type of process that would allow funding for those types of equipment. Ultimately, the goal of our incentive programs is to take an old piece of equipment that's emitting at certain levels, higher levels, and replace it with something new that operates and emits at much lower levels. And that's how we calculate our emission reductions there. So just in terms of how an incentive program would come about, it would need funding and statute legislation language that would say you can provide funding for this type of activity to replace X with Y, so to speak.
Okay, and I'll do a follow-up 2 questions. What I was referring to is some of the equipment has different engines mounted on it, not necessarily the truck, but just, and I wasn't clear in this, so I want to clarify. There's engines that are on these trucks, 1, 2, or 3 of them that operate different pieces of the equipment. So that's the clarification I want to offer. It's not really a question, but it's like it says emergency vehicle replacement. Now there's a mandate that certain amount of wells have to be abandoned in a certain amount of time. Is there any, this could go on, we could have this discussion offline too, but this is an emergency. You have to get rid of some of these wells. You have to stop contamination of certain things. And instead of, you have emergency vehicle replacement, or is there some other, does that make a category that would help us?
So yeah, specifically on the emergency vehicle replacement, that as an eligible category within the Moyer program for primarily fire equipment. I think it's other sort of life-saving equipment, I think in general, but specifically designated for fire truck replacement is how we've been able to spend some of that funding. And that's really the only category that we've been able to do there, but for fire and ambulatory services. And then, as far as, I appreciate your clarification there on the engines that are used on the back of trucks to power various types of equipment. At this point, there's not a specific incentive program that looks at that type of equipment anyway. So it would really need to come from the state level down to establish an incentive program for that type of replacement activity.
So in a lot of our meetings, not just the EJAG, but the CAC meetings, it seems like a state emergency to get this work done. Who would I reach out to have that conversation?
don't know if I have a clear answer for that one. Oftentimes these things are generated through legislative action. Through the, your state, local legislator.
Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, questions, clarifications. We'll bring it back to the document that the district would like to have us adopt so that they can move on with their budgetary processes. Is there a motion and a second to adopt this?
A motion. A motion.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Go ahead, man.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion and a second.
I'll go up for public comments on this before I call for roll.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments on this item in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield?
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto on this item?
No public comments in Modesto.
Are there any public comments on this item in Fresno? Seeing none and none online, I'll call for roll. Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Graywall?
Yes.
Mr. Freitas?
Yes, yes, sorry.
Ms. Gutile?
Yes.
Ms. Vielma?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Helm?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
No.
Okay, through the chair, motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we can move on to our the annual review and recommendations for our 2025 goals and objectives for this group.
Yes, through the chair, Ryan Hayashi, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer. Each year, the Environmental Justice Advisory Group, consistent with your bylaws, the group comes forward with a recommendation for a set of goals and objectives to help guide the work of the body. Ultimately, the recommendation goes to the executive director who approves the final version. Kind of taking a step back, several years ago, we had a really robust discussion and there were quite a few changes made to the overall goals and objectives. And there was an additional change made last year to change one of the objectives that just focused solely on providing Spanish translation and opening up more broadly to any language, which was a good recommendation and was incorporated. As a reminder, the EJAG, you don't have to take action today. We can discuss and bring it back for further action at a future meeting if that's the decision, or the group can to take action to discuss and adopt a set of goals and objectives to be provided to the district's executive director. Currently, we've reviewed it and we don't have any recommended changes for the document this year. At this point, I'll turn it over to you, Chair Gutile, for discussion and consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. Let's go ahead and start the discussion in Bakersfield this time. Okay, seeing no comment or questions in Bakersfield, let's go to Modesto. Seeing no comment or questions in Modesto, we'll go to here in Fresno. Keith. I saw Keith's. I saw Keith's hand first.
Oh, and we went over this like at infinity and beyond on changing this thing and getting it right. And I think we just should keep it the way it is.
I agree. I think we worked a lot to put this draft together. So I think I wouldn't make any changes. The only thing that I would requests from staff, not changes in the document, but that I think sometimes we have a plan, but I don't think we are tracking, like, okay, so how well did we implement this plan, right? So in maybe during the future EJAG meetings, we can get some insights. I think Jessica started doing it a little bit, but for example, for the goal one, what has happened since we have added this objective and this goal that maybe is already happening within the district, but because we are not here with you sharing an office and seeing how is this being implemented, I think it's just a matter of, you know, when we have the CSE meetings that we have ways to track, that will be the only thing. But in terms of the adding or changing, I wouldn't recommend anything.
So all I would like to say is that I agree we should just leave it the way it is. My only comment would be, we're going, right now, after the election, we're going into uncharted territory. We don't know what new regulations or laws are going to come. There's gonna be some major changes at EPA. We don't know what's going to happen to certain areas. We may find that some of the things that we talk about in here, like climate change, will not even be something that we're able to have as part of our purview, depending on what happens with federal law. If anything happens that changes what we can even have a say about, I just ask staff to come back and let us know, and we could revisit it. But other than that, I think we should just leave it alone.
How much of you?
Yeah, there's some.
Sorry, Laura, got one more. I think we should have a DOJ committee established so that we could check and track the efficiency and effectiveness of this implementation of the action plan.
Raina or Patricia, did you have any comments, questions?
I would just say that after reading and knowing that, you know, it looks like a lot of work has been done, and I just have to say, I look forward to not moving backwards, and, you know, if there can be anything done to ensure that we are really moving forward to protect the community and the air around us, that would be fabulous to just like really keep into consideration. And I love the idea of tracking all the action items and what is being accomplished. I think that that'll be a great opportunity. Maybe we should just add a celebration party at the end, because I hope that we're celebrating this process. Thank you.
I second that motion.
Yes. First drinks on me.
Wow. Now let's do it.
I mean, we don't need any vote. It was just discussion, or do we need a vote? Okay. Do we need public comment on it?
So we'll go out to public on this item. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any public comment in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and none online. Just need a motion and a second.
I made a motion to approve our EJAG goals and objectives and action plan
For 24, 25, 25.
2025.
I
And I
second.
Okay, you guys.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Multiple seconds.
Okay, I'll call for roll.
Yes.
Ms. Martinez,
Yes.
Mr. Graywall,
Yes.
Mr. Freitas,
Yes.
Ms. Gutile,
Yes.
Ms. Vielma,
Yes.
Mr. Helm,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Okay, through the chair, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to number 9, AB 617 and community engagement updates. She's out sick. today.
It can be a queen or a king. That's all right.
We have the king today. We have the king today.
You have me tonight. Once again, Ryan Hash, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer, and I'll be giving a quick update on the district's implementation of AB 617. As many of you are aware, we have 4 selected communities in South Central Fresno, Shafter, Stockton, Arvin, Lamont, We've been implementing community mission reduction programs that are specific to those communities. We've been making good progress on getting and working with community members through community steering committees and getting actual real emission reductions in those areas and mitigation measures to also protect the community's health. Should start off with this one. So as you can see, like the community emission reduction programs themselves, when implemented, have huge emission reductions in those communities. So some of the progress that we've seen, I think it's always great when we can, show some pictures of what it looks like actually happening in the real world. On the top left, that was a tree planting. You may see some members of a member of the EJAG in that photo. That was at Edison High School in South Central Fresno, where were children and community members, along with community steering committee members and district staff, help plant trees at the school as part of an urban greening measure. In the center there, that's a car replacement workshop that are being held in these communities. And we're just seeing tremendous interest. We've received so many applications. We just had a meeting in Arvin, Lamont last night, and we talked about historically, the numbers of applicants for the program were like doubled just within a few months of what we've seen historically in there. So it's a really effective outreach and communication. And exciting to see on the right there. That's one of the lawnmower events that SB was talking about, and we've taken up to, I think, 450 lawnmowers to these events, and successfully given them out, including one day where it was 108 degrees in Arvin, Lamont. We still had everybody out there. I got to participate in that one. Thankful, we had a really great strategy to make sure that it was able to be done in a safe manner for everybody that was participating. Down below is the back to school outreach that we've been performing at the schools. We find, at the recommendation of the community steering committee members, to find new and creative ways to better outreach the communities. It was definitely, one of the things we heard was doing more and different types of outreach at schools. One of the great recommendations was drop off and pick up at the schools. And so we actually have staff. We work with the school districts, work with individual schools, and they allow us to be present, and we will actually hand out materials about, educational materials about district programs, ways in which community members can take action to take part in clean air strategies. And we've just seen such tremendous benefits from all that work. One thing that we also heard about was so every year for this program, we have to develop annual reports that we give to the state. Historically, these are very dense documents with, they'd be, 60, 70 pages for each community. We worked in partnership with the community steering committee, but one of the recommendations that they had for us was, how do we make this a document that is more consumable to members of the community, not just, steering committee members, but the members of the public, residents of the communities. And so we took that, and so we used what's called ArcGIS. It's a geographical information systems. One of the features it has, though, is a storyboard, and so it's a very nice way of presenting information with using a lot more pictures and graphics. And we developed those both in English and in Spanish. And when we presented it to the community steering committees, we got really good, feedback on it, and the excitement for sharing it with the community members and the public as a whole. And so we have in the document, there's links to these reports both in English and Spanish. And so here's just some pictures of what that looks like. So one of the things, the state legislation itself says that AB 617 was intended to be a 5-year program where we, work together, 5-year program for implementation. So we had time to develop the community emission reduction program, but then once you have that adopted and approved, then you had 5 years to implement it. And what we found for a whole host of reasons, whether it's COVID, transitioning to virtual, there's still unfinished work to be done. And so we met with the community steering committee members and we talked about, well, how do we transition from, the 5-year community, so South Central Fresno and Shafter, and still trying to meet the spirit of it, which was, fully implementing the community emissions reduction programs. And so we have ongoing commitments to work with those communities. We have a good plan on how we're going to continue to complete the incentive strategies that were in those community emission reduction programs. And so we're going to continue to work with them, very closely on that. And so one big change is, so right now we're currently meeting on a monthly basis and we're going to be transitioning to quarterly meetings, while still in between, obviously, working with to implement those measures. And, we're excited that, one of the biggest benefits of this program is that, we've learned a tremendous amount. And so we're looking to actively apply those lessons that we're learning from the selected communities and continue to expand our engagement efforts in disadvantaged communities throughout the valley. That's one of our big goals that we've had. It's one of the governing board's big goals is how do we get into the other communities and talk about the programs that we have, the resources that we have available for community members. And so that's the end of my quick AB 617 implementation update. Take anyone's questions.
My goodness, that was awesome. Okay, we'll start questions and comments with Modesto. SB or Thomas?
I would just like to thank the staff with this process. It's been a process in and of itself, but nonetheless, I think that we have had a lot of input from our community members on the Stockton side, and they're elated about the different incentive programs, and then bringing them to them, I think is been crucial as far as, moving ahead with other incentive programs. So even though there has been a lot of criticism for this AB 617 from others in the state, I think that here in San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, the staff has made it so that, we're able to move forward on the agenda to better serve our environmental justice communities and to really implement the program as it was written previously, like by Garcia, who did this legislation. And like I said, it's been a process, but I think that, we're moving ahead in the right direction. And our community members, that's the feedback that we have once they know about the program. It's a constant presence in our communities for AB 617. And that's why I think the other community members want what AB 617 has, because they've seen the actual, changes taking place with vehicle replacement, lawnmowers, et cetera. So again, thank you to the community and to the staff for being able to do this. Thanks.
Okay, and we'll go down to Bakersfield. Okay, seeing no comments, I'll bring it back here to Fresno. And we'll start on my right. No. Go ahead, Raina.
Oh, boy. I would just say thank you for allowing us to see the process. I think it's so great that community can participate and be listening in, because these are great ways to really understand what can happen in your community when you're all working together. when I look at the map, I'm like, hey, where's Tulare County? We're definitely missing on there. So I can't wait to share this information with the community and let them see everything that other communities in Fresno, Shafter, Lamont area have been able to accomplish by coming together. I know that there's a process with community members out in Terabella that have been working on an AB 617 plan. So that would be so wonderful to see. I think that the resources and the funding allocation would really benefit a community that has two major highways going through it and, tremendous amount of just diesel trucks going through the community. So that's exciting. As a Tulare County resident, I'm very excited. So thank you.
Maybe.
Wow, how many meetings did we have? Meeting monthly for 5 years? I'm gonna be lost. What am I gonna do the second Wednesday of every month? I have separation anxiety from this meeting. Just kidding.
Ryan's
No,
gonna do
it
some quick
was
math on how
exciting.
many.
But in the meantime, my one question, Ryan, is about the numbers that are on the second page where it says the reductions that we would see in both NOx and PM. Are these were the targets for after the 5 years? And are we gonna be able to measure if we met the targets or not?
So these numbers aren't based on the 5 years. These are based on the expected life of the equipment and that's being replaced. So in actuality, so for example, a fireplace, replacement, if you go to a natural gas, there's a set time period that we calculate the excess emissions. But in actuality, the devices actually last a lot longer. So it's not fully captured, but it's just like the life of the specific piece of equipment.
Okay, Keith?
I just want to make a thank you. I want to give a thank you to staff and you guys. Since this public outreach program it's been setting the bar for the EPA and to other states that we can lead this lineup in this, and especially for the countries and for other countries and the contiguous states that impact our state air that are right next door to us that we have no control or over, or no power over. So I want to just commend and thank you guys for the work you've done.
Okay, and now we'll turn it over for public comment.
Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this? I have one coming up.
Hi, I'm Victoria Santiana. I work with California Rural Legal Assistance, and it's great to be able to see what work you all have done. I guess the question is the type of outreach that has been done for these kinds of events. How do you advertise for them, or what type of outreach do you guys do in Southwest Fresno and possibly Delray? Because I have not seen any of this outreach in our communities, and it would be great to be able to provide information to our residents so that they can participate. We have a community group over by Edison High School, so it would be great to be able to provide this information to them. And then also if there's any maps that can be provided to us that can identify where these charging stations are, so that people in Southwest Fresno can possibly be a little bit more excited about, pursuing being able to apply for a electrical vehicle. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, through the chair. So there's a lot there. Thank you, Victoria. I appreciate it. In terms of the way in which we outreach, we have social media campaigns. We post on Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, to try to get targeted outreach. We also like I mentioned, the back to school, like we're regularly in the schools and we provide flyers and other materials about events that are happening to try to get the word, because this is an area specific program for these. But at the same time, we work extensively with the environmental justice and community-based organizations that work in those areas. We provide them materials. So we're happy to add you to that list of people that we would share out materials to make sure that you can get that out to the people that you are working with as well and the groups that you're working with. Trying to remember the maps in terms of EV charging. There's a lot of resources and we can that we're familiar with that highlight where all the charging infrastructure is in certain areas, and we can definitely provide you links to those. We can, if we don't have printed maps of those, but we can provide links to those.
I would reach out to Naomi, get on her network list.
Oh, we're friends.
Oh, you guys are friends?
Okay. Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Okay, seeing no further comments and none online.
Okay, thank you. And so we'll go to number 10, district comments.
I really appreciate Samir being here and getting the opportunity to welcome both Patricia and Raina. We're very excited and very happy to have you. The more members that we have on the committee and more people that we can have providing voices for all their communities is great to see. And we're excited to have the both of you. We have only 2 remaining, which is good. We have 1 at-large Merced. So if anybody knows of someone in the Merced area that could spare some time and to help in this effort, that would be fantastic. And then we still have 1 small ethnic small business owner position as well. I also really want to thank both Nyameen and Manuel for participating in the interviews for Raina's position. We can't do this work without you and the volunteers, and so we greatly appreciate it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go to number 11 for potential future EJAG meeting agenda items. I did make the note about the funding and the different programs that we've got. And again, I'll work with staff on what that might look like. Anybody have anything else?
I have one.
Derek. Okay, Derek.
Thank you. I just had one. I don't know how you would want to put this on there, but I'd like to have a line item, just at least maybe for the next 3 or 4 meetings anyway. And where if there are any, you guys stay on top of any legal changes to either to the EPA, to CAR, to CARB, based on what's coming out of Washington right now, there may be things that are going to come out that we need to be aware of because it could change how we do business here. So if you could just keep us appraised of what's going on and what's coming out of the EPA with changes that are going to be happening there.
Okay, and then Nyameen.
Thank you. Well, my previous recommendation of having a way of tracking, and we don't have to do it by each objective, maybe pick one and we get like an update per meeting. But I would also like to have a presentation about what the district will do for the implementation of SB 1101, the prescribed burns that I think is already started in January, right? So I know that in the past, there have not been a lot of prescribed burns for obvious reasons here in the Valley, but at the same time, given the magnitude of the fires that we're seeing in Southern California, I think it's about picking, like, do we want more prescribed burns that are controlled and when we are not going to affect us that much? Or do we want to expose ourselves to these
Super fires.
uncontrolled, supervised and uncontrolled fires? I mean, we have had them in the past, right? So let's knock on wood that doesn't happen again.
Through the chair, on that agenda item, I know John came, we had a great presentation at the governing board study session, both from the CAL FIRE as well as the US Forest Service, that talked about this has been a huge priority for our board for a long time, how to work with our land management agencies to do more prescribed burning and mechanical means of getting rid of the fire load in our forests. If I had some wood, I would knock on it. I think the last several years, we've been very fortunate and haven't had, I feel obviously like everybody else, awful at what's going on in Southern California as a result of the wildfires that are going on there. But there was a great report from the fire agencies talking about the successes they've been having in our forests and helping trim back the fire load up there. So I don't know if that was something you were like also in that, maybe like, we could bring some of that information that was shared there to talk about what's being done here. It's the agencies historically had challenges with getting funding, but the state has allocated more funding to this, and so we have seen increases in the amount of prescribed burning over the last few years, as well as a lot more mechanical means of getting rid of the materials. But yeah, wrote that down as one of the items. Thank you.
And Keith?
So I was just privy to an introduction and a trial from these folks from Denmark that have invented this new equipment that is propane based with these specialized burners that can sweep a path over a bordered area, even between homes in the mountains or flat, around electrical grid facilities, around anything that's potentially has fire. And when it passes, it does the burn, and then it does the dry, the wet down, so that when it makes one pass, it's complete. And 90% of that burn doesn't come back, and it could come back. It's a mechanical way to do it. It's cheaper than labor, and it's something that I would suggest that the board take a look at, and to get in front of these new technologies that are coming out. And I can hook you up with the people that'll do that if you guys want to get involved. And then the one last thing is to get in front of and keep pace with the new technologies, these AI data centers. I have no idea if these AI data centers, there's going to be millions of square foot that's going to come into the valley. And I don't know how they impact the air quality. So I'm just wondering, if there's an impact with these AI data centers on the air quality, and how will it impact our valley?
They're gonna get powerful.
Yeah, it's going to be standalone power. So there'll be standalone off-grid power on a lot of these things they're talking about. So, I just wanted to know if we can get ahead, just get ahead of it. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. Good set of future topics.
John, Randeep, and Bakersfield, do either of you have anything for a future item? I see none. I'll go with SB and Thomas.
I had a question to see if there's something that we could do. For example, when we start out, well, welcome first to everyone that was just onboarded, but maybe as part of the onboarding process, and then as a refresher for some folks that want to just opt in, if we can get just like a high overview of the programs, like those programs which we speak about, and the different incentives that are for our EJ communities, and that way folks then have an understanding, because I think a lot of the questions stem from, what it is that, that these programs fund and what they can't fund. So I know we talked about the funding source, but then maybe adding a component to what they are, like on a high level, because obviously there's a lot of detail involved. And then should one of us as members want to take a deeper dive, then we can have access to that, via a link. It doesn't necessarily have to take up time in our meeting, but it could be, just an email that's sent out to everyone. And then that kind of will give us an overview. So that way, as far as adding like clarification to folks as far as like what's the funding source and kind of like an overview of the program, I think might be helpful, just especially, folks coming in, and then just as a refresher for anyone else. That's just a suggestion that maybe we could do that, have that done. I know that, again, that's a lot to ask for the staff. I'm not saying for the next meeting, but just to try to, have that take place. Thanks.
I just had one quick comment, because SB, you gave me an idea. I don't know if it would be something you could do, but if you could have a welcome package for the new members that would have a section that would have everything she was just talking about, basically it has a highlight section for all the major items that the person will be able to take home and read through and kind of have a 90% understanding just from that. It wouldn't probably be that hard to put together.
I'm embarrassed to say we don't have one already. So that will definitely be something that we work to put together. And yeah, we want to make the onboard transition a better process. Thank you for the recommendation.
And through the chair, even if we don't have it in a printed material, but even if we just started, Ryan, with a online, just to email out with the links, and then we'll have a quiz. No, just kidding.
I was thinking the same thing as I would like a
you could get
refresher.
swag from the air district. But yeah, so even if it was like first, even like, we can later do the packets, but even online, so that way folks can have that onboarding process. Thank you. You get a bag.
Well,
thanks.
An action item for Jessica. Yes.
we don't need to have, like printed packets for sure, but I think it's important to have like onboarding, like folder where not only descriptions of the programs, but even how the EJAG started, right? Like what was the purpose and all that. I mean, I think that as new members come in and us, we can refresh our memories.
The bylaws, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put together an electronic method, whether it's a thumb drive or a link or something to that effect for the group. Thank you.
And we can put that on Jessica's desk and teach her not to miss a meeting or be sick. She's not allowed to be sick. You did great though, Ryan.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I did receive some emails from with the bylaws and quite a few things. Maybe not exactly everything that you guys were asking for, but I didn't just come in here with nothing, just so you guys know.
Okay.
So you got something waiting there to start.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, it's the second opportunity for public comment.
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Any other members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment at this time? Seeing none, and then online.
Okay, number 13, EJAG member comments. I'll start off and thank Victoria for being here today and talking about your community's needs. It always helps me as a member to define different areas. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. Also appreciate staff and all that you all do. This is quite a big list for future agenda items, but I think that as we work through the year that we can bring these things forward and talk about it all. And thank you to the grants committee. And thanks to all the other members that take the time to be here tonight. With that, I will open it up to anyone else who has any comments. We'll start in Bakersfield. Seeing none, we'll go to Modesto.
I'll just say quickly, as far as a packet of information or like it was said, you know, it could be in a file on a, you know, like a Google shared drive folder or something like that. We could maybe include the presentation that we got a few months back about environmental justice, kind of the environmental justice 101 presentation that the two ladies gave a few months back. That could be a good addition to the packet of information.
Any comments from the members here in Fresno? Go ahead, Rena.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the committee. I think it's definitely a great honor. And I hope to do some justice for our community by bringing back a lot of what we get to discuss here. Hopefully, Tulare County is ready to have a lot of coffee meetings and and short discussions. But I think another thing I'm just wondering is, as we're sunsetting, you know, AB 617 process here in Fresno, like, what's next? What does that process look like? Have there been any thoughts or any communities that have been considered? Like, has that discussion happened? That would be wonderful to eventually hear back, is like, where are we at now and what's coming up for the community and what opportunities might arise, so that if there is interest from one of our communities to step forward and show interest, that we're ready to have that conversation.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the warm welcome. I'm looking forward to working with the group. Also want to apologize for my tardiness. I was on my way back from Sacramento, so I apologize. I will try not to make that a regular habit. But just wanted to say thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing no other comments. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 27th at 5:30. And with that, I will call this meeting adjourned at 7:10. Thank you all for being here.